I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Senegal to introduce a statement by the Minister.
Je vous remercie, Madame.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, it is an honor for me to present the pre-recorded statement by His Excellency Amadou Ba, Minister for Foreign Affairs and Senegalese abroad of Senegal, at the occasion of the 75th session of the GA.
Monsieur le Président.
President of the General Assembly, heads of state and of government, heads of delegation, United Nations Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, on behalf of His Excellency Macky Sall, President of the Republic of Senegal, I would like warmly to congratulate the Republic of Turkey in the light of the appointment of Ambassador Volkan Bozkir to lead the work of the 75th session of the United Nations General Assembly. Senegal assures him of its full support, and we wish him the very best of success in his important work. I would also like to thank his predecessor, Professor Tijani Mohamed Bande, for the remarkable work that he accomplished in one of the most difficult contexts, characterized by an unprecedented health crisis. I also would like to reiterate Senegal's support to the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, our support for his continued work to achieve a reformed United Nations as the bedrock of more inclusive multilateralism based on solidarity. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we had planned to mark the 75th anniversary of the UN in style. However, here we are, meeting virtually, physically separated from each other as a result of the pandemic. The infinitely small, to paraphrase President Macky Sall, has overwhelmed us. This is something that is unprecedented in our organization's history. Therefore, the topic chosen, the future that we want, the UN we need, reaffirm our collective commitment for multilateralism, address COVID-19 thanks to effective multilateral action, this topic could not be more timely, as it invites us to carry out a clear-eyed analysis of our common challenges. Marking this anniversary, more than simply taking stock, gives us a genuine opportunity to carry out a critical analysis of our organization's history, its achievements, but also its shortcomings, which may hinder the attainment of its goals, which are themselves more topical than ever. I would like to address three major topics in my speech. First of all, the imperative need for a collective response based on solidarity to the global health emergency. Subsequently, in an uncertain context, the need for the United Nations, whose vocation is universal, to remain committed to its overarching priorities defined around the three major pillars of peace and security, sustainable development, particularly the climate emergency, and promoting and protecting human rights. Lastly, I would like to share some lessons from Senegal's experience as a developing country, notably when it comes to its strategy to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, 2020 will forever remain etched on our memories as a result of the pandemic's devastating effects on all areas of our life, which have shown, if there was any need, our collective vulnerability. In these circumstances, I would first of all like to pay tribute to the hundreds of thousands of victims of COVID-19, and I wish those who are sick a swift recovery. I would also like to pay tribute to those who have been tackling this collective threat, in particular health workers. I express my admiration and my encouragement to them all. To the international organizations, notably the WHO, responsible for coordinating the global response to this threat, I reiterate Senegal's support. My delegation calls for the effective implementation of the resolution adopted by consensus at the 73rd World Health Assembly in order to ensure rapid affordable access to essential health technologies and products, such as tests, medicines, and vaccines. We believe that any vaccine or treatment developed to fight against COVID-19 should be considered to be a global public good, and it should be accessible to all countries. Senegal, through the Pasteur Institute and with the support of the government of the UK, Senegal has signed a partnership to ensure the production of rapid testing kits for COVID-19 at an affordable price in the context of the Diatropics Initiative. By implementing its commitments, our country will release the results of this partnership. We must also work together to ensure the availability of and access to essential health services, in particular basic primary care, which are crucial for the attainment of the 2030 Agenda, notably SDG number 3. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the devastating impact of this crisis on our economies is unprecedented. The collapse of economic growth and its resultant drying up of our sources of foreign currency and the drop in exports, investments, and migrants' remittances have plunged the global economy into a crisis that it had not seen since the 1930s. Although it had entered a period of sustained economic growth, Africa, like the rest of the world, is feeling the full force of the serious consequences of this major crisis. To ensure a proper recovery of our economies and to ensure global socio-political stability, we need to give further priorities to international cooperation and solidarity. That is why His Excellency Macky Sall called for developed countries to fulfill their commitments in terms of official development assistance, to cancel public debt and to restructure private debt. I take this opportunity to commend the efforts made by the members of the G20, the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund in the context of the initiative for the suspension of debt servicing. I would call on the African Union to continue its efforts to attain this moratorium to 2021. What Africa really needs is not only a debt moratorium, but rather it's a debt forgiveness, so as to foster economic and social resilience, and also to enable us to build effective health systems. In this context, the Secretary-General's appeal for a large-scale multilateral response to mobilize financial resources to the tune of 10% of global GDP warrants our unwavering support. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in its 75 years of existence, the United Nations, the symbol of multilateralism, has taken strides forward in the promotion of peace and international security, mutual understanding between peoples, sustainable development, and the respect for human dignity. It is beyond doubt that the organization has contributed significantly to the realization of our common ambition to rid the world of the scourge of war, poverty, and exclusion. The various peacekeeping operations throughout the world, decolonization, the implementation of the 2030 Agenda, but also the support and the assistance that the United Nations provides to all people in need throughout the world, regardless of their condition or background, all bear witness to this. Today, we need a rejuvenated multilateralism. We need a reformed and effective universal organization as collective responses to our existential questions, so that no one is left behind. Together, we can address the various challenges that we are facing, such as terrorism and violent extremism, armed conflicts, financing for development, illicit financial flows, migration, poverty and exclusion, public health and climate change. One may well wonder why Africa is the only continent not to have a permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council in the light of all this. By hosting the ministerial meeting of the Committee of 10 Heads of State and Government of the African Union, to address the issue of the Security Council's reform, Senegal sought to reaffirm its commitment to this issue, which, more than a moral imperative, is also a way of renewing the founding spirit of the United Nations Charter. Africa is certainly facing political and security challenges that are hindrances to achieving sustainable development. In the Sahel region, for instance, terrorism and violent extremism have found fertile ground, leading to death, destruction of infrastructure, looting, and fostering a climate of fear. All of this with political and institutional instability, poverty, exclusion, porous borders, and illiteracy only exacerbating all of the above problems. This should not, however, lead us to ignore the other Africa, the entrepreneurial, innovative, inventive, successful Africa, which has admirably addressed the COVID-19 pandemic in the teeth of the gloomiest predictions. Young people in Africa, accounting for 60% of the population, is under 24. Its immense natural resources and its dynamism are all formidable sources of potential for social and economic transformation. The time has therefore come to consider this Africa too. As President Sall recently said, and I quote, "For a global economy on its knees, the Africa being built is a source of opportunity and investment." End of quotation. Hence, the decade of action to attain the Sustainable Development Goals, which we have just begun, constitutes a new opportunity for us to mobilize, to ensure a better recovery post-COVID, and to ensure the comprehensive implementation of the 2030 Agenda. By implementing the declaration to mark the 75th anniversary of the organization, which Senegal fully supports, we must renew our commitment to the UN's reform agenda to give pride of place to multilateralism around the United Nations. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the determination with which we are beating back the COVID-19 pandemic must also encourage us in our struggle against climate change and our efforts to preserve biodiversity. Indeed, there is no need to recall that climate change has a devastating effect on populations, notably in that it exacerbates poverty, the rural exodus, social exclusion, and intercommunity tensions around natural resources. By way of example, like several countries in the Sahel region, Senegal recently saw the equivalent of a month's rainfall fall in only one day. Thousands of individuals saw their lives in upheaval as a result of this. On behalf of future generations, we must ensure that the post-COVID recovery bears the issue of climate change in mind as a priority, and this through the implementation of the Paris Agreement in particular, and also the respect of developed countries of their financial commitments in this regard, notably through the Green Climate Fund. The challenge of the erosion of biodiversity is equally concerning because, as His Excellency Macky Sall has said, the loss of biodiversity is a global emergency that should concern us all. This, as we are all part of the same ecosystem. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, to address the COVID-19 pandemic, Senegal, with the support of its partners, has launched a program for economic and social resilience to the tune of 1 trillion CFA francs, or $1.6 billion US. This program has allowed us to garner the necessary health equipment to ensure the provision of hydrocarbons as necessary, and to support the private sector through the necessary tax incentives. This program integrates the SDGs and gives a key role to health and pharmaceutical sovereignty, to resilience, and to macroeconomic stability. It is in this context that the government has also launched an investment plan of 500 billion CFA francs, or $1 billion US, for the period 2020-2024, to bolster the resilience of the health system. Thanks to these efforts, Senegal has been ranked second on the Global Response Index in the context of the response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The priority action plan that Senegal has for 2019-2023 has therefore been revised upwards from 4.098 trillion to 14.712 trillion CFA francs, or 26 billion US dollars. The crucial issue of climate change is given pride of place in this context, notably through the implementation of our plan for a green emerging Senegal. When it comes to foreign policy, Senegal, in line with its principles, continues to advocate good neighbourliness, regional integration, and to promote peace and human rights, and international solidarity and cooperation. This is the meaning behind the work undertaken by our President, in particular in the context of ECOWAS, to ensure the return to stability in Mali for the good of Malians, but also for the good of the entire sub-region. Senegal is pursuing these efforts also within MINUSMA. We are providing our high-quality contribution to ensure the maintenance of peace with a view to promoting security and stability throughout the world. In the Middle East, Senegal believes in the right of the Palestinian people to an independent and viable state with East Jerusalem as its capital, coexisting in peace and security with the State of Israel, both within safe and internationally recognized borders. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it would be remiss of me to conclude my statement without highlighting that the future that we want depends on our learning lessons, notably from this health crisis, because in spite of our resilience, the pandemic has shown the beaten track to be unreliable and forced us to break with the past. As we are all in the same boat, as we are all facing the same vulnerabilities, Senegal remains convinced that there is no alternative to collective action based on solidarity. Hence, the sustainable development that we are aspiring to, for us and for future generations, must be based on our common humanity, and it must be in harmony with the laws of nature. That is the meaning behind the new global order advocated by our President, this based on justice, the rule of law, fair and equitable governance, in cooperation, solidarity and mutual respect, that is to say, inclusive multilateralism, exemplified by a reformed and effective United Nations. Thank you for your kind attention.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the Minister for Foreign Affairs and Senegalese abroad of Senegal for the statement just made. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Liechtenstein to introduce a statement by the Minister.